This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hey, Drew Dixon here to tell you about what you're about to hear. This is a little bit different than our typical episodes. Whenever I have the chance to go to a convention, I like to share as many interviews with the cool, interesting, accomplished video game designers I get to talk to while I'm there. And so on this episode, you're going to hear a whole bunch of, in fact, 8 short interviews, 5 to 8 minute interviews with game designers that I met at PAX South, Penny Arcade Expo South in San Antonio, Texas. So in this episode, you'll hear from Bekah Saltsman. She is making a game called Overland, this post-apocalyptic strategy survival game. It's really unique. I like it a lot. She and her husband have a publishing studio called Finji. They've put out some killer games like Night in the Woods. You'll hear from Rami Ismail, who is one half of Vambleer and is making a new game called Ultrabugs. Vambleer have put out a lot of great games like Super Crate Box and Luftrausers and Nuclear Throne. Then you hear from Cavanagh and Chipzel. Chipzel is doing the music for Cavanagh's new game, Dicey Dungeons. Cavanagh is most known for Super Hexagon and BBBBB. Not sure if I got the right number of V's in there, but you'll really enjoy hearing from them. You'll also hear from Kieron Kelly, who is and has been working on Divinity Original Sin 2, and he hints in that interview about some new things to come, which I think is exciting. So also Tristan Barona, who is making a really cool new indie game that I'm pretty excited about called Don't Give Up, that taps into anxiety and also is really funny, manages to be really funny and unique. You'll hear from Sam McCully and Tom Sharpe and Jorge Garcia, all making fascinating games that I think are worthy of your time and attention. So really hope you dig these interviews. And by the way, most of them will be conducted by me. A couple of them will be conducted by other editors at our site. April-Lyn did one. Stephanie Skiles did a couple as well. So really hope you enjoy this episode. And be sure to go rate and review us on iTunes and check out the other episodes we have of Humans of Gaming and our other podcasts, Free Play and The Pull List. Thanks. Drew Dixon here at PAX South. I got it for a minute. I'm tired.
Which one it was?
So yeah, one of the PAXs, you know. I'm here with Bekah Saltsman. And Bekah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am the CEO of Finji. So we're a small independent developer and publisher. So we've been working on Overland for like 5 years. We launched Night in the Woods in 2017. We're publishing Tunic and also Wilmot's Warehouse.
So Night in the Woods, I've never met someone who doesn't love it. What's it been like to make a game that's so beloved, or to help publish a game that's so beloved by so many people?
It was actually as someone who worked on the game and kind of being outside of the development team, it was really fun for me taking it to shows for years and years because I knew how loved the game was, but the team didn't. Yeah. So it's been almost more fun watching sort of the shock from the team, even still almost 2 years post-launch, kind of understanding oh wow, we made this thing. But on top of that, one of mine and Adam's main goals is to help developers be sustainable and being able to even be the small help that we were for the team to bring this game to the larger population and give them financial security and healthcare and help them make more things. I don't know, that's honestly what sticks with us the most.
That's great. That's cool. So tell me about Overland. What makes it unique?
Aside from the fact that we've been working on it for 5 years, it's lived in my house. I don't know, it's a turn-based, procedurally generated strategy game, but because that's not really a genre that I play. We've come at it from kind of almost outside of the genre in a lot of ways. Like Adam loves XCOM, he loves, Into the Breach and 868 Hack, and like this is his genre. But we were trying to figure out how to bring strategy with as much depth and difficulty to maybe someone who doesn't play or who plays only board games. So we have a lot of like interesting story components inside Overland, and we focus a lot on the idea that people would play the game together on a couch and bicker. So it's not multiplayer, but we want people to argue while they play. Yeah. Because that's the way Adam and I play games together. But yeah, it's...
You argue a lot. When you play games?
No, it's not that we argue. We because Adam...
Fun arguing.
Well, Adam questions everything when he plays a game because he's a designer. Yeah. So he's constantly like picking apart things. So it's even board games, like everything is questioning why something works and why the system or the systemic reactions of certain gameplay functions. Like that's just living with Adam. So being able to play a strategy game like Overland, but also have story components, like it's just the way we love to play. Yeah. It's the way we play stuff like Pandemic even. Right. But yeah, it's beautiful. Our team's amazing. A lot of them are actually first-time developers. Like this is their first launch. Our art director's amazing. She was just like a talent that applied back in the day. But yeah, it's coming out this year, and we're so excited.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think last time I talked to you, you were telling me it's based, or maybe loosely based on this weird sci-fi novel about trash and...
Yeah. So that's called Roadside Picnic, and loosely based as in it's an idea that we really find fascinating, which is what happens to humans when something extraordinary happens to them, like for real. So it's... We joke like there's no Bruce Willis in Overland. He's not going to go up and blow up the asteroid heading towards Earth. Like what happens to the Earth or to the United States when like you've passed the event horizon, like there's no turning back, something's happening and you are just trying to survive. Right. So in the United States, like Overland takes place kind of after that event horizon in a lot of ways. Yeah. So we don't have guns in the game because there's a lot of bullets in the U.S., but they'll be used up pretty fast in an apocalypse. So there's like trash and there's mechanical cars and there's gasoline. And the idea that you need to go west. And why you're going west is not anything that you as a player will know initially, but the world will get weirder and weirder as you move west.
Okay. I like that. I like things getting weirder. No, that's great. And if you had to narrow it down to one thing that you hope players gain from their time playing Overland, what would it be?
Ooh. This is going to come from my perspective and not Adam's. So Adam would be like, have a really, hard strategy experience. Mine is I really want people who think they don't play strategy games to sit down and play it. We have taken great pains to make the game incredibly approachable and accessible. Not even to a fault, but like that's sometimes what it feels like. We will rip out the UI, at least 100 times at this point, because if I can't sit down and intuitively know how the buttons work, I'm literally going to bounce right off it. So I would love for people like me who are like, I only play RPGs or I only play puzzle games to like sit down and be like, I'm going to have this really cool experience on this road trip. And, we're going to make hard choices, and I'm going to take care of this squad of people kind of moving across this post-apocalyptic America. So that's what I hope.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot. Well, it's a great looking game, and I played it a couple times at one of the PAXs, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to check it out. When can we... You said hopefully sometime this year, right?
It will definitely be this year. I know the date, but I'm not telling anyone yet, but it will be 2019, and I'm so excited to say those words out loud.
Yeah, that's cool. And one thing I'm just sort of curious about, because like you and Adam, every time I see you guys at conventions, you're so fun to talk to, and you seem like... it's a little nosy of a question, but you seem like you like each other a lot, and video games, especially doing this independently, is really freaking hard, right?
It's
how do you guys manage to still like each other and do this together?
That's actually a really good question. So Adam and I have been married. We got married in 2006. So what is that? It'll be 13 years this year. But we dated for 7 years before that. Okay. So I've known Adam since he was 16. We were long distance for 3 years, but the main thing, honestly, is we're both really laid back and chill people in the first place, and the only thing that is really stressful for us is actually parenting, because we have 2 tiny goblin children.
Yeah.
Like, they're not that tiny anymore. They're like almost 6 and 8. And they're huge because we're really tall. But that's honestly the most stressful thing for us, because we want to make sure that our weird life doesn't make their life weird.
Yeah, right.
Any weirder than it needs to be anyways. So I don't know, we communicate a lot and we trust each other a lot. He thinks I'm really smart, which is like super humbling, but he's also kind of like my hero and mentor in the industry. I didn't start out in games. But yeah, I can count on one hand the number of fights we've had over the last 20 years.
Oh wow. That's
so
great.
Yeah, I don't know, we just get on really well.
That's great. One last question I like to ask designers and developers is, why do you do this? What drives you to make games?
I want to make beautiful things. I want more beautiful things to exist, and if I can provide that opportunity for other independent creators to make a living bringing things outside of maybe like mass marketing potential, like I'll do that in a heartbeat. And I don't know, I didn't start out here, but once I got into games and I met sort of the community and the people, like it feels weird to think about being anywhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks so much. I can't wait to check out Overland soon, and Tunic sometime in the next couple years, year and a half or so, maybe we'll see.
Probably 2020.
Yeah. Cool. We'll be looking forward to it. So thanks so much, Bekah. Dixon from Love Thy Nerd here with Rami Ismail, one half of Vambleer, and you're showing a new game here, Ultrabugs, right?
Yes.
And you guys have made, a lot of great games. Nuclear Throne, Weird Fishing.
Ridiculous Fishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Was Weird Fishing that was...
Radical Fishing was before that. Yeah, we made too many games. We've done like 18 games in the past few years. Super Crate Box, Luftrausers.
Super Crate
There's
Box.
a lot.
Yeah, so tell me about Ultrabugs, what makes it unique.
So Ultrabugs is sort of it's a game which, it's a top-down shmup. Every time you kill an enemy, it splits into 2 or more. Yeah. So basically what you're doing is, as you're defeating enemies, you're making things harder on yourself.
Yeah.
You don't really aim to ship yourself. If you shoot, it keeps shooting in the direction you're aiming. If you let go of shooting, it'll aim automatically at the nearest thing. So it's very much a game about control. It's chaotic. We like to think that if you play for 5 minutes, you're 5 years older. Yeah. It's super intense. It's arcade. It's difficult, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as a game between games. You play 20 minutes a day, that should probably be the max you play.
Yeah. That's kind of unique. I mean, there's definitely a drive, I think, in this industry to play games that people are just going to sink hours and hours into. Was that something that you approached this project with? Like, hey, I want to give something that's a little more bite-sized?
Yeah, I think so. I think the industry is moving in interesting directions, right? The people are playing fewer games for more time.
Yeah.
Like, they play games like Fortnite and League and Dota and stuff like that, and those are amazing games, but I think there's a lot of space for just smaller, like more bite-sized experiences. And I also think that as game designers, like the two of us got a little tired of trying to make games that just maximize how much people play.
Yeah.
So instead of getting people to play maximum amount of time, we just want them to get the maximum amount of fun out of as little time as possible, so they can focus on other games or play other games.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what JW did with Minute. Like, there's this, seems like you guys have a desire to respect the player in a way that maybe is somewhat uncommon. Is that true?
It's a certain type of trust, right? We trust our players to figure out stuff that we don't tell them. We trust our players to be curious about the design. We trust our players to spend time to get better and to really understand the systems. But we also want to respect our players' time. It's the most valuable thing they have. You buy the game and now you expect that the game respects you, I feel. Yeah. That doesn't mean we're going to be nice to you. It's still going to be hard, right? We're still going to try and find ways that you don't expect to end your run. But at the end, we want you to just have a good time, and we don't think we need to waste a lot of your time to do that.
Yeah, that's great. If you had to narrow down to one thing, what do you hope players gain from their time playing Ultrabugs?
I think Ultrabugs is very much a game about a little bit of zoning out, a little bit of mastery. Yeah. Right? It's a little bit, if you try too hard to pay 100% attention, you won't do well. So it's a little rush of adrenaline somewhere in the middle of your day, and if you want that, we have it.
Yeah. That's great. Is there something that because your games are pretty diverse, is there an undercurrent behind all of them, something that you hope you instill in the people who play them for all your games?
I think most of our games are about mastering something, about understanding something. I think a lot of our games are games for game designers.
Yeah.
Like they're people that like game design, like our games. There's always something a little deeper. But I think the biggest undercurrent for us is that we don't like doing the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Which is why, we have a very diverse, like we have a fishing game, we have an airplane game, and now we have a shmup. Like, it is every time we do something, we just want to do something new, and I think the thing that connects our games is the way they feel.
Yeah.
Like they feel like Vambleer games. And, I love how they feel. So.
Yeah, I love how uniquely your games control too. I think there's a control element that you step into each game going like, okay, this is going to be unique, which I really appreciate. One or two last questions I want to ask is, why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
That's a big question. I think I got into... So there's two answers. One is very practical, which is I'm not good at anything else.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is what I've done since I was 6 years old. I've wanted to be a game developer since I was 6 years old. I just kept doing that because I got better and better at it. The other thing is I grew up in a family that's between two cultures, right? Dutch Egyptian. And Egypt and the Netherlands are not very similar countries, but one thing I always appreciated is if I put a soccer ball on the ground and I kick it at somebody, they'll kick it back.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't have to talk about that, we don't have to understand each other.
Yeah.
And I think games are this amazing global language that we have that every human inherently gets.
Yeah.
Like being playful, like doing something that is non-threatening and curious and can tell us something about each other or the world.
Yeah.
And it might sound sort of like ideological, but that's what I believe games are. Like they're connective tissue between people. So I make games because that's the only thing I'm good at, but I believe in games because I believe they will help us be better people.
Yeah, no, I believe it too. I think games are one of the oldest forms of human interaction, and they're culture shaping, and they have a great potential for good if we'll just tap into that a little bit.
And I think we do already. Like even the games that a lot of people think about as like bad, like people talk about Call of Duty and say like, well, it's a violent game, but at the same time, in every server there's a kid from like somewhere in the US playing with a kid from somewhere in Russia, playing with a kid with somewhere from the Middle East.
Yeah.
And they're just playing the same game. Like it doesn't matter where they're from.
Yeah.
They're playing the same thing.
Yeah, that's great. I talked to you about this a little bit earlier, but I think you've kind of developed a reputation in the industry of someone who's, you've been very successful, but you're super accessible. Like you've helped a lot of people in this industry succeed. Like you've helped a lot of other people do what you do well. Where does that come from for you, that desire to help other designers?
Well, again, I believe games to have tremendous potential to communicate things we don't know.
Yeah.
So it logically kind of follows that the more people are doing it, the better it'll be, right? I believe that people should have the opportunity to make games. If we have a global language, everybody should be able to speak it.
Yeah.
And it hasn't always been that way for various reasons, opportunities, economies, locations. It's been harder for some people to make games, and I just don't want that to be true. I want anybody to have the opportunity I had at 6 years old to sit down behind a computer, be curious about how it works, and then grow a career making games. And I was in the Netherlands, a country that, I got taught 5 languages growing up.
Wow.
Like, I had opportunities, I had things to fall back on, my education was effectively free. Like I had all this opportunity that was very unique to me, and I just want to make sure that if you don't have those opportunities, if you're not from a place like that the games industry is still open and welcoming to you, and that everybody has equal shot here. So, you're never going to get that completely right, but like, if I can help, I want to help.
Yes.
I want to see the games those people make.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing it because I know a lot of people in this industry who I've even talked to personally who, you've helped them make great games, which is an awesome thing to be able to do. So, I really appreciate your time, Rami. This is great.
Thanks so much. This was fun.
Yeah. And Ultradogs, you don't have a release date for that yet, do you?
So, Ultrabugs is currently slated for as soon as we're done. I don't think it's going to be super long because it's kind of a smaller game.
Yeah.
I don't want to promise a date yet because I also don't know like what tempo we're going to finish it in.
Yeah.
But expect it in the next few months somewhere.
Okay. Great. Cool. We'll be looking forward to it. Thanks again. This is it. That's it for us here at PAX South.
April-Lyn here with Love Thy Nerd, and I am joined by Terry and Chipzel, two of the designers for Dicey Dungeons. Hi, how are you?
We're good.
Good. Can you tell me a little bit about Dicey Dungeons?
So Dicey Dungeons is a deck building roguelike. It's basically you play as one of 6 different characters. You explore a dungeon and you fight monsters, you find equipment, you try to make your way out.
And what is one thing that both of you hope players get out of this game?
I am really proud of the amount of variety in the game. I'm hoping that really comes across when people play, that it starts very simple with one class that just has simple equipment that they just put dice on, but it gets way, way more complicated and way more interesting. So as you play through all the different classes, it's almost like 6 different games.
Yeah, cool. So I noticed that the concept came first, and then the art and the music happened recently. Can you talk a little bit about the design direction that you went with the artwork and the music?
Sure. So this started as a game jam game for 7 Day Roguelike last year. It's now a 4-person project. We have a programmer, Justo, art director is Marlo, and Niamh here is our musician.
Hi.
I was really interested in making, because it's a deck building roguelike, and roguelikes tend to have a certain very dark aesthetic.
Right.
I really wanted to do something that was like cartoony and energetic and full of energy and just was a little bit different.
Okay.
So, I look for people that can help me with that, and I think I've found a really great team.
Okay, yeah, and your music is very energetic.
Thank you. Yeah, I did all the audio, the sound effects as well. The music is all written on Game Boy, which is a style that people are familiar with me and Terry from Super Hexagon. All of the sound effects are made on like synthesizers and modular synthesizers and stuff, so it's been pretty cool to explore a kind of like cutesy, weird, trippy, hyped up, like kind of very not your stereotypical dungeon crawler sort of theme. So yeah.
And then did the music and the art kind of happen simultaneously, or did one come before the other, or how did that evolve?
Well, Lee did start before Marlo,
Yeah,
and
but
we
it
had
was kind of simultaneous. Like
yeah,
we kind of were.
we had like a month where we just put together a teaser trailer as we were I was finishing up the last free alpha. I think last August, and it took about a month or two for everything to gel, but once it did, it all clicked into place.
Yeah. So you were telling me a little bit earlier about the inspirations for this game and how you came up with the idea. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, for the Jam game, this was basically trying to make a Dream Quest-like. Dream Quest is one of my favorite games. It's this classic deck building roguelike, and I kind of want to take the deck building roguelike ideas and do something different with them. So for 7 Day Roguelike, I figured it would be like a really small, simple thing.
Right.
Like if I add dice to the mix, what happens?
Right.
But it just turns out there's like a lot of depth to this concept, and there's just way more than I was expecting, which is why I've turned it into a big project. This is
that's cool.
Sometimes you hit across an idea that's bigger than you thought it was.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, talk about Super Hexagon and that game that has lots of V's in the title.
Sure, I just say V.
You say V. That was going to be my question. How do you pronounce it? I alternate between V and V.
I really enjoy people's attempts to pronounce it. I don't really care what people say.
Okay, so those are both really hard games. What have been the reactions over time to those? I know I told you that I wanted to punch you after I finished that.
I get that a lot. No one's ever really gone through with it, though. It's fine. People often threaten, I hated that doing things the hard way bit. I'm going to punch you in the face.
Yeah, and there's a song about that on the soundtrack.
Yeah. Magnus wrote something to encourage people, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess the last question I have is, why are you involved in this industry? Why do you make games? Why do you make music for games? What keeps you going?
Big question.
That is a big question. It's a really difficult one to answer as well. I'm one of these people who's wanted to make games since I was a tiny kid. I had a Commodore 64 growing up, and I was really fascinated by the idea of when you have a Commodore 64, it opens with this prompt where you can type anything in and things appear on the screen, and just being able to get a sprite on the screen and move it around is kind of magical. And once you do that, I guess for a certain type of person, it's really hard to want to do anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, you got a Game Boy when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah, so I've been making music since I was 16 on a Game Boy.
Okay.
I'm now 27, so, you know, it's been a pretty long-term project. But yeah, I don't know, I guess the reason that I first of all started to make music was just to be able to create something and like make sense of like your old teenage angst or whatever. And then I kind of just fell into games, thanks to Terry. And then through that, it's just been the like amazing nature of like meeting people at cons and meeting like-minded people and just the sort of creative environment and being able to collaborate with people and make cool things happen that people enjoy. So yeah, it's cool.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Drew Dixon from Love Thy Nerd here with Kieron Kelly of Larian Studios, and you guys have made Divinity Original Sin 2, and some other great games as well. So it's been out for a while, but there's still, you told me earlier, your community is still growing. Tell us what makes Divinity Original Sin 2 such a great game that people keep wanting to come back to and stick around with, and even you're even growing these years later.
Yeah, so I mean, I think part of it is probably because it's not like a normal, like, the big multiplayer games right now, which are like these hour-long experiences. Yeah. Ours is a multiplayer game, but it's much more, it's 100 hours or so. You were saying your team is playing it. And so I think that as people play it, that the viral spread, if you want to use that niche marketing term, is a bit slower because it's like, well, I've played it now for 100 hours and now I'm communicating with my friend 2 months after release rather than a week after release. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. And we've just released the definitive edition back in September, so that gave us a new push because new content and a lot of changes that made the community happy. But very much it's all about just keeping the community going by interacting with it and doing what we can for them,
Yeah. And if you narrowed it down to one thing that you hope players gain from their time playing your game, what would it be?
Oh, I hope it's a sense of freedom. Like everything that we do about our design is to give them that sense of freedom of being able to explore the way they want to be able to play the way they want to, be that as a super hardcore experience or an enjoyable story-based experience. And then even on the way we design our story, it's all about exploring that and stretching the boundaries of how you want to achieve a certain thing. So very much is that I'd love them to go away with a sense of that was a game that gave me freedom that nothing else can do.
Yeah, that's great. And how are you guys? I think you guys have a sort of a relationship with your community that seems to be pretty healthy, and maybe even healthier than a lot of other studios. Because I think it's not uncommon for studios to get on the wrong foot with their community, but you guys have seemed to like have this community that loves what you do and respects you. How do you maintain that relationship with the people who play your game?
I guess we're as upfront as we can with them. The Kickstarters and the way we have communicated over our dev experience in general has been really healthy for us as a company. But I think because we're honest a lot of that time and we're saying like, well, this is what we're working on and this is what we're thinking, and like that type of transparency, I think the community has really latched onto. And so we have a core community there. Well, like 42,000 people backed us on the last Kickstarter. I'd imagine if we were to do some sort of backing again, we'd get more than that because our community is growing. Yeah. And that core community are super communicative with us. They're watching everything we do, and we're showing them what we're doing. We're actually communicating with them. So, and as much as possible, we're doing our very best never to make a promise that we can't keep. And when we do, we're incredibly sorry about it, and we make sure they know. Yeah. So we're always trying to make sure that we're managing and working with their expectations so that they're happy, and we just want to make games that our fans love, and that's all that matters to us.
That's great. One last question I like to ask game designers is, why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
Yeah, I remember the last time I answered this question. I mean,
is it different?
I'll give you different answers.
Okay.
No, I love being like the game industry is where my heart is. I mean, so much of my passion is here, but also. A lot of my social life is even here. So much now is wrapped around playing games with your friends, be that with my kids at board games or with my wife or my friends. Like, I feel like it's a much more, if you're going to do an entertainment thing, it's the one that actually breeds a community, right? It's the one that encourages friendships and builds relationships. And I love that about it. So I want to be part of that, and I love making games that help do that.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you play, are your kids old enough to play Divinity with you?
No, not quite.
Not yet.
No, they're 4 and 8, so it's more just board games and very much me doing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my daughter's on my Switch a lot. She plays it more than I do these days.
That's cool. Cool. That's great. Well, I really enjoyed chatting with you, Kieron. Thanks so much. And definitely check out Divinity Original Sin 2 if you haven't yet. And also, anything we can be expecting from you guys in the future?
There's something in the future for sure. No, we're working on our next thing, and as soon as we're ready to talk about it, we'll be ready to talk about it.
Great. Well, thanks so much. That's it for us here at PAX South. And Tristan, what's your last name?
Barona.
And you're the lead designer on Don't Give Up?
Yes.
Are you kind of doing this on your own?
So I started, its conception was over 3 years ago, and I just started out not knowing really much and just making dinky little pixel art doodles, and dinky little pixel art doodles started to become like reminiscent of buildings, and then buildings became landscapes, and eventually, over a year down the road, I was like, I have something somewhat of a game. So I got a programmer on board, and we worked on it for about another year and a half, and we just brought a composer to our team. So we got a composer, a programmer, and then everything else that doesn't fall under is me.
Okay, nice. Cool.
You did amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's cool. So what was the impetus for the game? Like, where did, I know that it's about, well, tell me what it's about. We'll start there.
So the game is about an antisocial game developer who is at a low point in life and sort of is at a branch where he's trying to decide what's the point of going on if things always end up badly.
Yeah.
So the game starts off with him choosing the what's the point option, and then sort of the rest of the game is sort of him trying to bounce back from that. And in order to do that, he needs to confront the manifestations of things like depression, anxiety, and fear that are continuing to affect his world.
Yeah, so I'm sure you get this a lot based on the premise of the game, but is it somewhat autobiographical?
Yes, I do get that a lot. And the funny thing about this game is what I hear most, somehow, despite its mature themes and sometimes over-the-top humor, all age groups seem to like it. Children like the art style, but the older folks always say it's relatable. And I find that very funny because we all go through stuff, we all have difficulties, and while this game might seem like really over the top and kind of sad, we've all had sad moments and we've all had these internalized feelings, but in society we're sort of designed to keep that to ourselves, and it's kind of strange because having issues is just kind of human, we all go through it, and yet we feel the need to put a veil over it. So in a way, this game is an attempt to sort of bring that to light in a fun and approachable way for people who don't know what dealing with mental illness is kind of like, and it sort of puts it in a package where it's kind of understandable.
Yeah. So kind of one of your goals, it seems like, is to maybe bring some awareness, or at least some sympathy for people who are going through this if they're not going through it themselves. Yeah,
I believe it's a hugely important thing. I think, it's hard when you're someone who doesn't deal with mental illness to really empathize with something you can't see. So I think what I really like is that I personify those things, like in the beginning where you just played, in reality, no one should feel like harming themselves, but when you have things inside of you that are making you feel like that's the only way out, sort of personifying that and saying, hey, this isn't me, I want to be happy, but things going on inside of me are keeping me from doing that. So I think the package that I'm putting in sort of in the game, it makes it a little bit more easier for someone who might not deal with that or have experience with that to be a little bit more empathetic and understand it a little more.
That's great. Have you talked to people who have have people who have gone through some of that stuff, that had suffered some from anxiety and mental illness issues. Have they played your game? What has their response been?
They generally, I get a lot of people who say it's extremely relatable, and that's kind of the major thing people say to me. I get a lot of, it's relatable, especially, people, a lot of times people find comedy funny because it's relatable. And one thing that I've noticed is that people will sometimes laugh at moments in the game that are sort of dark, but they're laughing because it's relatable, not because they think it's like comical or funny. Right, yeah. So you can see sort of in the way people respond and laugh at moments, it's not a that's funny laugh, it's a I've been there at one point in time kind of laugh. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I really appreciate the heart behind it. If you had to narrow it down to one thing, what do you hope players gain from their time playing your game?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. I think what they will get from playing the game is sort of a really unique experience that makes you care about characters and a story in a humanizing way that's very unique to indie games. Yeah. I think it's something that you've just got to experience. There's a lot going on, and you'll definitely resonate with the characters and see a part of yourself in the game.
Yeah, and I played it for just a few minutes earlier, and it's pretty funny. Like, it's got a kind of a, I don't know, it's a quirky sense of humor that I really appreciated.
Yeah.
Does that come from you too? Like, you do a lot of the writing?
I do all of the writing, and I inject a little bit of myself into all of the games. When it comes to writing the dialogue, when it comes to writing for Tris, the main character, the way he's written is what would I say in this situation, or what would I do in this situation. So everything kind of falls into place around him, and it makes writing the game not easy, but very natural.
Yeah. One of the mechanics when you battle, in the actual battles in the game, is this small talk feature where you try to give a cut down to whoever you're fighting or whatever. Is that from you? When you mess around with your friends, is that what you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from New York City, from the Bronx. It's a rough around the area's neighborhood where we sort of show love to each other by dissing each other and insulting each other. So if somebody's wearing a pair of shoes that have holes in them, we'll make fun of them, but it's really just all love. So yeah, that was a huge part of me growing up.
So another question I like to ask game designers is, why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
I don't know what else I would do with my life. I've been playing them since I was a child, and sitting behind a desk, making other people's dreams come true. I just had to strike it out on my own and give something to the world that they would remember from years to come. I, as a 31-year-old adult, still remember games that I purchased as a child when I was 10 that are still clear as the light of day to me. I remember purchasing Chrono Trigger, and I remember the name of the store even when I was just 8 years old. It was called Universal Games off 3rd Avenue, and I want to make a game so good that people will remember that level of detail 20 years down the line. That's what I'm striving for.
That's cool. Well, I really enjoyed it. It's really unique, not quite like anything I've seen here at PAX, so I'm excited to see it when it comes out. Do you have a release window?
The release window is, I'm a perfectionist, so far my targets have never hit, but that always results in a better game. But the current target is July latest. We're going to try and make it for June, but July is what I'm comfortably saying will be go time for the game.
Yeah, well, cool. We're excited about it. Thanks so much for showing it to me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Tell me your name.
I'm Jorge Garcia from LeapGS Studios, developer of Tunche.
Cool. And tell me about Tunche.
Well,
Tunche, am I saying it right?
Since the name is in Spanish, it's pronounced Tunche, but we don't mind. As long as people know about the game, that's fine.
Yeah, right.
Well, Tunche is a 2D beat 'em up game with roguelike mechanics. We want to make something like a mix between Castle Crushers and something like Dead Cells or Rogue Legacy.
Yeah.
So you have to beat the whole game, and if you die, you bring back experience points, you become stronger, you earn new skills, and then you try again.
Yeah.
but you can play it co-op. There are 4 different characters for you to level up, and well, that will be the final game.
Okay.
Right now, during PAX, we are demoing a special arena mode. It's called Tunche Arena. It's like a special demo you can download from Steam, the single-player version. But here on PAX, we have co-op, 2 different characters, and well, the players have to beat 8 waves of enemies and a boss. We want to make sure the combat is fun, that they can do many combos, and well, that they enjoy the game.
Yeah. And you said it's inspired by like Peruvian or Amazonian folklore?
Yeah, the whole game is inspired by different legends from Peru, from Brazil, from different countries in Latin America that touch the jungle, that are near the Amazonian jungle. So for example, our bosses are based on different legends. Like there is a legend about a pink dolphin that kidnaps people. That's one of our bosses.
Yeah.
There is also like this huge sloth-like creature with a huge mouth on his stomach, with fangs and everything. That's another boss.
Okay.
Even Tunche, the name from the game, that's another legend.
Yeah.
So we are using a lot of that.
So is one of your goals of the game to sort of introduce people to that culture a little bit and some of the, some of the culture and that kind of thing?
Well, we're a Peruvian studio.
Yeah.
We like people to get to know that many people know the Incan culture back in Latin America, so they are pretty famous already. But not that many people know that there is a lot of mythology, a lot of legends, a lot of stories from the jungle too.
Yeah.
So we want to use that, and we want people to know that we have something rich over there.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make like a let's say a game that talks about the stories, talks about the folklore. We want to make our own interpretation of those legends, so that when people play Tunche, they want to know more about those, so they go to the internet, to Google, and they learn more.
Yeah.
So we take inspiration, but we are not reimagining. We are reimagining the legends. We are not doing them just like they are, they were.
Yeah. It's really creative. It's really beautiful. All hand-drawn art, you said.
Yeah. Each frame of the game, each animation for each enemy, each boss, each character is hand-drawn. So we got a team of 3 artists plus 1 art director, and they are doing everything by hand.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it looks great. If you had to narrow it down to one thing, what do you hope players get out of their experience? What do you hope they gain from their time playing the game?
Well, first, from the demo, we want them to enjoy the combat. We want them to try it and have fun, so that they know that they can download Tunche at their houses, at their home, play with someone else once the co-op demo is available. And from the final game, well, we want people to know about the legends from the jungle.
Yeah.
And also, we want them to know that there are games like this, indie games, but they are full of complex mechanics and a lot of fun coming from Latin America.
Yeah, definitely.
That there is an industry there growing, and well.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier you're one of the few studios in Peru making games, so that's got to be pretty exciting for you.
There are a bunch of studios. It's not like there are 1 or 2. There are many. They released a dozen of studios.
Okay. Yeah.
But they are all small. The industry in Peru is not very famous. We don't get that much support. So right now we are working with our publishers over on Hub there in Digital. They are from Russia.
Yeah.
So we're working with them for Tunche. We want people to know that there is an industry in Peru.
Yeah.
And that they can find really good developers down there.
Yeah, that's great. One last question. Why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
What drives me to make games?
Yeah.
Well, that's something I've been wanting to do since I was little. Since I was at the school, I always wanted to make games. Originally, I wanted to travel overseas and study somewhere else, but well, I got stuck in my country, so I still have the same dream. And we are all just in Leap, in our studio. We are all a bunch of people that want to make games.
Yeah.
So that's like our passion. So that's what drives us.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Tell me your name again?
Yeah, my name's Tom Sharpe, and I'm the director of Gossamer Games.
Cool. And your game is Soul.
Yes, yeah.
And what is your role on the team?
So I'm officially the director, whatever that means. So really that just means I do bounce around and do a little bit of everything. Okay. Programming, art, marketing, stuff like that.
Yeah. That's what you do when you're indie. You do a bit of everything, right?
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, great. So tell me about Soul. What makes it unique?
Yeah, so Soul is this ethereal adventure game where you're painting with light as you're exploring So we drop you into the world and let you explore at your own pace. We don't tell you where to go or what to do or anything like that. Just kind of let you explore and discover the world around you.
Yeah, and the world is dark and you're lighting it up, essentially?
Yeah, so everything starts out totally dark, and then as you're lighting things up, they'll stay lit up the entire game. So you can always see where you've been and still need to go based on what's light and dark.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe there's like a mythology to this world that you're lighting up?
Yeah, definitely. So we don't have any explicit characters or dialogue or story like that. So really you're going through the environment and trying to discover the history of the world around you.
Okay, cool. If you had to narrow it down to one thing, what do you hope players gain from their experience playing your game?
I would hope that they sit down and just have kind of an introspective experience and come up with their own conclusion on what the world means and what the story means to them personally. Because that was important for us of designing a game that everyone could have a different personal interpretation and different personal experience with.
Yeah, that's great. And so, you talked about earlier about how this is sort of a bit slower experience, like more, it certainly leans heavily into the aesthetic experience of the game. Is that important to you to make a game that's maybe, there's a lot of flash and bang and bombast in this industry, but you're doing something that's more, I think, maybe more ephemeral or something. I don't know the word, but
yeah, definitely. I mean, so our goal with Gossamer games is to basically take kind of our life experiences and just emotions that we're feeling and to put them into video games. So we're trying to do that with Soul and kind of putting our own feelings into the movement of the game and the choreography and the music and all these things.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's beautiful, and I really enjoyed playing it. It was a nice change of pace for the show here for me at PAX. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thank
One
you.
last question I like to ask designers is, why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
I believe that video games are the most important cultural medium of our generation. And I think that we're in the perfect time where we have the ability to influence the direction that this art form is going to be going for the next century or two. And I think that is so important for culture and for art. And it's so exciting to be part of that and to have a say in the direction it's going to be going in.
Cool, that's great. Well, thanks so much for your time. Tell me your name again.
Sam.
Sam, and what's your last name?
McCully.
And what is your role with Bluefish?
Producer and QA manager.
Cool. And tell me, I know you guys got a lot of games here. Is there like an underwriting current behind all your games that you guys publish?
So we kind of look for something that's unique in some way. So we looked at stuff like projection and that whole shadow manipulation we hadn't seen done before. And we thought, that's fun. Let's play around with that a bit. And the minute we got it on consoles, it's like, this is accessible to everyone, super fun. Let's keep going with this.
Yeah.
Same with some of our other games like Minesweeper Genius and JackQuest. They're all simple to play, difficult to master, but it gets you in the door. I mean, kind of gets that excitement going.
Cool. And so projection, that is coming out this year, right?
All things considered, it should be out this year, yes.
Yeah. And tell me that was designed with, there's some other cultures that were consulted and religions and things that were in the making of the game?
Yeah, so we looked at, the developers looked at it from the standpoint of any culture that has used shadow puppets to tell stories.
Right. Yeah, shadow
puppet.
So
the main character is a shadow puppet.
Yeah.
So I think you start out in Germany as a little girl who's just lost her parents.
Yeah.
And then you go through countries such as Indonesia, China, Turkey, Germany, and England. Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously we wanted to get that right and I guess stay true to that theming. So we kind of consulted with other cultures, got a sense of, hey, would it be out of place to put this in? Not appropriating something just for the sake of a game, trying to make it right.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's cool. And then Obey Me, tell me about that one.
Yeah, so Obey Me is like a top-down 3D brawler.
Yeah.
As one person's called it, it's holy punk.
Okay. What does that mean?
What does it mean? It's just like steampunk. We're trying to...
But playing with heaven and hell.
We're just trying to brand it like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, with it you play as Vanessa, as a demon hunter, essentially, with her partner and demon dog Monty. Essentially, just there's an overarching storyline, but just tracking down different bad guys. Well, bad guys than you guys.
Yeah.
Because I get the sense you're not the nicest people.
Yeah, that's cool. And then JackQuest, tell me about that one.
Yeah, so JackQuest is a Metroidvania sort of pixel platformer.
Yeah.
So it's super fun, super hard. I die a lot. Basically, you'll run through it, collect weapons, upgrades, health, specials, and you've got your task with rescuing your girlfriend who's just been kidnapped by an evil orc.
Okay.
So it's all one big cavern underneath, and as you go along, you'll find locked doors, and you need the right gear or keys to get through.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of doubling back.
Yeah. Cool. And if you had to narrow down to one thing that you hope players gain from their time playing your games, what would it be?
I'd really hope that, honestly, they kind of develop a bit of patience, because like a lot of the time we see a lot of people just rush through it, and that's fine. Like, people do that, but what you'll notice when you play stuff like Projection, you can rush through it, you'll do terribly.
Yeah.
Same with JackQuest. It's like stop and think a little bit, maybe
make some plans.
Yeah.
Plan ahead. Yeah. That's cool. And last question I like to ask people in the industry: why do you make games? What drives you to do this?
Basically, I didn't have a brother that was interested in playing games as a kid. I had a sister, she didn't like games. I enjoyed just the storytelling aspect, and I think over time it's been growing to be more cinematic, which is great to see. Honestly, for me, it was Last of Us. I played Last of Us and thought, wow, that is a story. That and Bioshock, and like that's what we aim for.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, man. Enjoyed looking at it. I appreciate the time.
Thanks so much for listening to this special episode of Humans of Gaming. Be sure to go rate and review our podcast on iTunes or wherever else you consume podcasts. You should be able to find this just about anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you can't find it where you like to listen to podcasts, let us know. We'll do our best to get it there. Also, would encourage you to go check out our other podcasts. The Pull List is our new comic book podcast that digs into why comic books matter and also digs into the connection between faith and fandom and comics. It's really great. Go check it out. Don't miss our free play podcast as well. By the time this comes out, or very close to it, we should have an episode dedicated to PAX South, which we unpack some of our favorite games of the show and some of the things that are just going on in the world of Love Thy Nerd. Again, thanks so much for listening to this show. If you love it, would you tell a friend about it this week? Maybe post about it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, wherever you do life. Go follow us on all the socials. You can follow me at Dixon82 on Twitter. Follow Love Thy Nerd on all the socials at Love Thy Nerd. We have a great Facebook community. Go join it if you haven't. Just search for Love Thy Nerd community on Facebook. That's it for us this week. We'll see you again next week for part 2 of our PAX South 2019 interview.